All right, welcome everyone to Mod Zero Orientation. My name is David Whitaker. I am the Mod Zero program lead here at Turing. My pronouns are he, him, and let's go ahead and kick things off. So gonna go over the agenda a little bit here. We're going to have this split up into 4 different sections. So to kick things off, Jeff, our executive director, is going to talk about Turing's mission and expectations. Then we're going to kick things over to Pam, our front-end engineering director, and then Sal, the director of the back-end engineering program, to talk a little bit about study habits. And after that, Emma is going to dive into community engagement. She's our community engagement coordinator here at Turing. And to finish things off, I am going to talk through sort of what to expect in Mod Zero and yeah, hopefully address any questions there. So like what it is, and I think that covers everything. So with no further ado, I am going to kick things over to Jeff to talk about Turing and what to expect.
Hey, I'm Jeff Kasmer, the Executive Director of Turing. Today I'm going to tell you a little bit about Turing's background, kind of where we came from and how we approach learning. So back in 2011, had a conversation with a friend of mine. He asked if you had really smart, hardworking people who don't know anything about programming, how long would it take to turn them into job-ready software developers? And I had never done that. To my knowledge, no one else had ever done that. And so I guessed about 6 months. And, since that conversation, we've been iterating and learning about the process ever since. We started Turing in 2014 as there were a bunch of programs kind of popping up across the country, but we really thought we could do something different, unique, and kind of in our own way. At the beginning, there was no explicit mission statement. We just had this idea of using the platform and privilege that we had to lift people up, to push them to the edge academically and let them prove that they could fight their way back and they could do it again until they essentially learned that they could do anything. Turing's really about building skill, not just knowledge. And that's part of why it's so different from a lot of traditional learning environments. It means that at Turing, you're going to be doing. You should be working a lot, not repetitive memorization. There's not a lot of flashcards and memorizing boring stuff over and over. Most often our work means pushing forward, getting stuck, moving back, trying again, getting stuck again, being lost in the middle and struggling. Sometimes you're in that struggle by yourself. Sometimes you're with a pair. Sometimes you're in a group of 3, 4, 5, 6 people. But when we look at the industry, what the best companies know is that great software comes from great teams. And great teams are not groups of superstar individuals, but teams who can rely on and support each other through the journey, through the ups and downs. Turing is all about working collaboratively in ways that you really might not have seen before. Turing students don't compete with one another. There's no rankings. That sounds dumb to me. Instead, they really compete with failure. They're on the same team, battling that failure monster back into his hole where he belongs. Along the way, everyone's journey is going to be different. For some, they'll start with background technical knowledge, and the first couple days, it'll seem like they're just so smart and know everything. Others will be diving in for the first time and just trying to figure out, just trying to keep their head above water and keep moving. The teams and cohorts thrive through a diversity of perspectives and experiences. So it's valuable to us to have that mix of people. The thing that you have to accept at Turing is that everyone struggles. I like to say, if you're not struggling, you're wasting your time. If you came through and every assignment was a breeze, you knew all the things ahead of time, then what did you pay this money for? Where are you spending this time? If you're struggling, you're learning, you're building new skill, you're doing the right thing. Maybe it's in the technical work, maybe it's in the group collaboration, maybe it's in the design of programs and systems, but everyone at Turing struggles. And everyone can build themselves up because often those puzzles are not solved by having the right answer or having the just correct set of facts at hand. They're solved by asking the right questions. And everyone who struggles can be a question asker. If we can be comfortable in that struggle together, then we can be free to ask questions, to consider perspectives, to try out a bunch of ideas and maybe find ones that push us forward. I think one of the hardest things for students new to Turing is that traditionally in a lot of academic work, you kind of take steps and like you're always moving forward. It's like we're starting at the beginning, we have an end in mind, and we're along the way. And so often when you're doing work at Turing, it's try a thing out, it sucks. Step it back. Try a different thing out. It's a little bit better. Okay, maybe it does work, but we don't like how it works. Step it back. Let's try a new thing. Try this. And trying ideas, proving out what does and doesn't work. It's not about getting things right. It's about building up the skill, building up the understanding, learning to see what great solutions look like, where they come from, how they evolve over time. Try out a bunch of ideas. Find the ones that help you move forward. Thank you for joining our team as we work towards this collective success. Welcome to Turing.
All right, we're good.
All right. Hi, my name is Sal Espinosa, and this is Pamela Lovett. We're going to talk to you a little bit about some study habits. So just to kick off, just a little bit of an introduction to who we are. Again, I'm Sal Espinosa. I'm the director of the backend engineering program here at Turing. I originally came as a student in 2016, February of that year. And I think really what drew me to Turing, in some ways I was just really tired of doing the work that I was doing. And I was unhappy, and I had done a little bit of work to, I had dabbled in HTML, CSS, some JavaScript, and decided that I really wanted to take the plunge. So I moved halfway across the country from New York to Denver and really dug in.
Cool. And sorry, Sal. I'm Pam Levitt. I'm the director of the front-end engineering program here at the Turing School. And, my story was pretty similar. I came to Turing originally as a student who wanted to learn programming. So a lot, much like you, right? Like much like the position that you're in right now. My background was in education and affiliate marketing, and it was actually the latter that gave me some exposure to building websites with WordPress, dabbled in a little bit of CSS and HTML like Sal, and that actually put me on this path where I was like, all right, how do I get better at this? So came to Turing to do that, and then I ended up being recruited on as a TA, and I've been here ever since.
With that, I think we want to talk a little bit about Locus of Control. And Pam, do you want to kick this off? I think that you have some pretty good.
Yeah. So the reason that we wanted to start off talking about Locus of Control is because we've run into this common question at Turing from students where they ask us, like, how can I prep? What else can I do? And one piece of this is going to be the work that you're doing in Mod Zero. So that's the tools and the procedures and the processes that you're going to be learning here soon. But another large, often overlooked piece is your perception about the amount of control you have over your academic successes and failures. In education, this is something called locus of control. So a student with an internal locus of control generally thinks that their success or failure is a result of the effort and hard work they invest in their education. On the flip side, someone with an external locus of control believes that their success or failure is a result of something outside of themselves, whether that's like luck or chance or fate or another person. So for all of us, locus of control exists on this spectrum of sorts. And you might be more internally focused in some situations and more externally focused in others. There are advantages to being externally focused at times. Like if you're in a really stressful situation, the ability to let go of that and move on, that's an example of having an external locus. The reason, though, that we want to bring it up and talk about it is that what we found in our time at Turing is that students who think about their success and their learning as something that they can actively influence are the ones who thrive. So, you're probably thinking from here, well, what are some of these habits of mind that you can cultivate to develop an internal locus of control? So, first thing I would say on the next slide is one, like recognize what you can and can't control, right? I'll give you an example. Let's say we have student A and student B, and both of these students don't do well on their first project. Student A, who has a more internal locus, might not do well on their project, on their assessment, and say, oh, I didn't study hard enough, right? This is what I need to do to get better. They recognize that they can change these things and approach studying differently. Meanwhile, student B, who maybe has a more external locus, might say something like, well, the instructor made the assessment too hard, or, the project was unfair in some way, or I just was out of luck that day, right? So again, kind of like attributing their success or failure on something that's outside of themselves. So that's the first thing, right? Like recognize what you can and can't control. The second thing I would say is to practice self-compassion. So really just being kind to yourself, right? This is a very hard program. As you move through it, focus on what you can learn. If you fail an assessment, instead of saying things like, oh, I'm stupid, like if I was a better programmer, this wouldn't have happened, like kind of reframe your thinking into like naming what you're feeling and learning from that experience. So instead of saying, I'm stupid, if I was better at this, I wouldn't have been, failing this assessment. You could say, wow, that didn't make me feel good, right? Like I feel sad that I failed this assessment. I feel disappointed, but what can I do to make it so I do better on my next assessment? And then the last thing I would say is really important to like creating an internal locus is to seek support, right? We've got a huge support system here at Network, from instructors to your peers to mentors. Other people can help you gain perspective. They can encourage you, they can inspire you, they can pair with you, they can hold you accountable, they can cheer you on. So making sure that you're making that choice, that you're in control of making that choice to reach out to that support system.
And I think, Pam, when I think about this, it's like there are a few things that I think about. It's like, first of all, and some of them, like you've said, the first thing I think of is you've kind of said to me about certain things that like you need to give yourself the space to be frustrated and be sad about an outcome. But then once you've had that moment, you need to like move on, right?
Yep.
It's like, don't let that be something that defines you and that you carry with you, right? Does that sound, I feel like that's advice that you gave pretty.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's like name the feeling, feel the feeling, and then move on. Yep.
Yeah. And I just think of all of these different like cohorts, and some cohorts who will come through, we don't change anything. We don't change the curriculum. We don't change the instructors. We don't change like really anything about a particular module. And you can have 2 or 3 cohorts come through back to back and just have very different experiences of that module, right?
Yep.
Some of them I think will say, man, that was tough, but I learned a lot, right? Some of them will say like, oh, this was hard, I'm not sure I want to do this. And some, it's just, and I think about it, and it's like the variable there is sort of the attitude that students are bringing to that learning. And I just think it's really important, and Turing is very much like what you make of it, right? I think it's kind of, cool. With that, I think I wanna dig a little bit into studying and staying organized. And Pam, I think this will be your first time seeing these slides, but I'm gonna lean on you. I wanna hear what you say in response to this is kind of like my thought on it, but I wanna chat with you and see what you think.
Okay.
And I think that I really chose to take a look at this, like when David had originally asked me to like put this together, I wanted to take a look at it through the lens of like a week at Turing. And to me, primarily, your week at Turing will be made up of lessons and class time, some project work time, some studying and practice that you do on your own, and then things that you are doing that are like not Turing related, that are pieces of your personal routine. Pam, does that sound about right? Do you feel like, is there anything that
No.
And I think that's pretty much good. I think that like it dovetails with this idea of like locus of control, because if you look at this, like the lessons are a portion of it, but so much of the work that you're doing while you're here at Turing is work that is not like directly supervised by an instructor, right? It's work where you really have to sort of like take the reins in terms of what you're going to do. And as instructors and as people who are designing the program, like one of the most important things we can do is give you advice on how to spend that time when you're not with us, right? Because that to me is like where you are going to do the most learning on like how to be independent and how to think of these things on your own and how to figure stuff out. So that's kind of the lens. I do want to say, like, I understand that if everything is super important, then that kind of means that nothing is important. And so I tried to think about this with an idea of like what is like required, which is just like, I'm sorry, you just have to do that. That's just like Turing. In order to pass, in order to move forward, like you have to do that. What is essential, which to me is like, this is something that is very, very, very important for you to be successful, but at the same time, maybe we won't be checking it. And then what is recommended, which I think is still like pretty high on my list, but also like if you slip for a week, it won't. I understand. Like I've also been in that position and I've slipped on some of these things. So
yeah, I love that. It actually reminds me a lot with students who I have talked to in the past who are running into, you know, struggles with like prioritizing things. It's very much like what you're describing here. Everything is important, so nothing is important. And then I'm just completely overwhelmed. I don't know what I should do and what I shouldn't do. So I won't do anything, right? You kind of like freeze.
Yeah.
And what has been helpful for many students that I've talked to is very much like what you are noting right there. I'm like, hey, let's make a to-do list. Let's separate it into 3 columns of like, what are non-negotiable priorities I'm going to take care of today, right? Like, what are some things I'd like to get to in the second column if I have time? And then what can wait in that third column, right? Laundry can wait, right? Dishes can wait when we think about life stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There comes a point at which laundry can no longer wait, but yeah,
that's true. That's true.
So as I think about like, as I think about that, I kind of want to also go from like higher level to sort of like deeper, so in more detail. And so at a high level, when I think about this weekly routine, I think about, you know, that weekend to me can be a good space where I like have a little more ability to structure my own time. And I think things that I would like recommend doing with that time are like review some of the topics from last week, see if there's anything that you kind of feel fuzzy about, preview the upcoming week. And I would say when you do this preview on the weekend, don't get deep into the details, right? I would say like skim through like what are the names of the lessons and like maybe a quick look. If you even like get into the lessons, like a quick look at what those lessons are covering. And then sometime, like if you've reviewed, you've done a little bit of previewing, sit down and sort of like make some notes to yourself to identify some deadlines, do some planning, identify some deadlines, make sure that you're setting aside some time and identifying time where you're going to work to complete smaller deliverables that aren't like your big project that you know is due on Thursday. That project is going to get done. Like you kind of by hook or by crook, I feel like you're going to spend a lot of time there. But there are other things that we ask you to do that you also just need to make sure to like carve out some time for. Is there anything else that you would recommend doing on the weekend, Pam?
No, I think that kind of like routine is a good routine to get into. And so 100% agree.
Yeah. And this to me, I'm intrigued here. This to me falls under that like highly recommended. I would say like highly recommended. But like if you have a week where like you are exhausted and you can't think of like previewing the lessons for the week, I understand. Like that happens.
That's true. Yeah. That's part of that being kind to yourself, right? Being flexible too. Like sometimes you'll have a weekend like that. So
yeah, I think that's right. So then, okay, the one of the things that will happen during your week, back to sort of those 4 different pieces, lessons. And I would say that lessons are not just like the time that you are in class with an instructor. There are things that you can do before, during, and after. Specifically, if you're looking before, I already talked about this weekly piece of previewing the upcoming week, but then the night before, right? Or maybe like, maybe sometime during the afternoon on the day before, preview that lesson for the next day. And here I would say like you're digging like just a little deeper than that weekly preview that I had recommended, but you're still kind of skimming. You're not necessarily like going through and doing every single code exercise. You might be jotting down like a couple of words that you don't know, or jotting down a couple of questions that you don't know, but you're kind of zoomed out on it and thinking about like how it connects to the larger picture and not worried about the details. Pam, is there anything else you do like to preview?
Yeah, no, just that. And it really emphasizing that point of like skimming, right? Like there are going to be lessons that you will come across vocab or certain words and you're going to go, gosh, like, I don't know what that is. Like,
Yeah.
And so not getting stuck on that and just keep on keeping on. So
yeah, this isn't the time to get frustrated about not knowing something, because like we assume that when you walk into a class that you don't know it. But
right.
You'll have heard that word before. You'll just have like
Mhm.
read that word, and like I think that it just makes you just a smidge more prepared for class. So absolutely, like be kind to yourself in the space. To me, I think that this is a time where you're taking notes. Maybe you're drawing some diagrams. To me, when I think about this idea of note taking, one of the things that I would recommend you do is spend a little bit of time thinking about how you take notes and how you're going to organize your notes, and like what the purpose. This is going to change. The reason that I'm saying like students need to do this is because, to me, Pam, like I think that even you and I would take notes in very different ways and think about like how we use our notes in very different ways, right? And I think that you as like a learner are going to know better than I do, like what is the most useful like note-taking strategy for you. I would recommend like looking some up just to like think about it, and not let it be something where it's just like, oh, this is how I've always done it, so this is how I'm going to take notes.
Mhm.
But it's sort of like ask yourself that question, like, am I taking notes because I just want to stay engaged and I want to make sure, and writing helps me stay engaged? Am I taking notes so that I can like review them for specific content? Am I taking notes so that I can like look back over the course of the past week and identify like the big ideas that happened in that week? And each of those, I think, would lead you to take notes in like slightly different ways. The one thing that I would recommend is like find a way, like maybe in the top right corner of, if you're taking notes in a notebook, to like date and label it. So if you have a question about a class and you can look it up on the calendar and know that it was like last Wednesday, then you can like come back to it and check your notes for that. Pam, is there anything that you do when you're taking notes to like be?
Yeah, for me personally, I definitely fall into that bucket that you talked about for taking notes to stay engaged. As I'm going, so a lot of it is like writing down the main points, making sure that I'm super focused on like the concepts that are being discussed. And I will often, if I'm in the middle of a course, like just review my notes very briefly, like later that night, but hours after, right? Like not right after, but give myself that space before I actually look at my notes.
Mm-hmm. When you're like right after, it's almost like it's too soon. You're like too in it, and it's like giving yourself that space to be like, what did I forget? What am I remembering?
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. Yeah. The other thing I would say about during a class, especially if you are like previewing a lesson, I would say like be flexible. Like there are times when like I think that Turing operates on these 7-week cycles, and we like, we will update lessons, and also like sometimes we will do something in the moment based on the flow of class or what we see students like understanding or what we think students are ready for. And like I would call the lesson plan like a loose plan. It's like sometimes like very detailed, but instructors know what they're talking about well enough that they can sort of like on the fly make some adjustments, right, based on what they're seeing from students. Does that, I feel like be flexible is like a big theme probably.
Yeah, oh, totally.
Yeah.
And back that.
Yeah. All right, cool. After, I think that I agree, Pam talked about this a little bit already, but like review your notes and maybe spend some time like in the margins. Like I'm thinking there's like a Cornell note-taking method where you can like write in a separate column like some of the major takeaways. Yeah, it's like super interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah, I like it. It's not something that I've done before, but I was like kind of reading up on it before this, and I was like, oh, that's a good idea. I should probably do that.
Yeah.
And then like end of the week, I talked about like the end of the week piece and like review anything that feels fuzzy and identify. And the one piece here that I do want to say is this idea of like when you identify a thing that feels fuzzy to you, to me and Pam, I'll be super intrigued. That is not necessarily an indicator that you need to study it more. I think that as students who are just coming through the program, it's very difficult to know what is important, like what is like important to memorize and to, or to like really know very deeply, versus things where it's like, yeah, I introduced you to this topic, but I just kind of want you to like have a sense of it, and we'll go into it more later. Does that sound, do you have lessons like that or?
Yeah, no, we definitely have lessons like that on the front end, and the lessons are prefaced as such as like, this is like a nice to know, not a need to know, right? Because there are so many things in the wide world of programming that are out there, that there are things that we want to touch on to make sure that you at least know that they exist, right? And that we don't expect you to have any sort of mastery over that concept. So that sounds right to me.
And I think that like instructors definitely do their best to like make sure that you know that. They'll say things like, I just need you to like have heard these words before, or just have a general, you're going to get more into that in mod 3, right? Or something like that. Or at the end of the lesson, they may ask you a specific question to say like, or give you some instruction to say like, if you feel as though you're walking out and you know this, then you know as much as you need to know, right? Which they will try to do that. Yeah, instructors will like try to sort of give you that sense of how important something is. But also if you've identified that there's something that feels fuzzy, I think ask an instructor, is this something that I need to deeply know, right?
Yeah.
Because they will tell you and they will have that sense. And it's very hard for students, I think, to have that sense without instructor input.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also know that like, it's okay for things to feel fuzzy. You're learning a lot of new things and making a lot of new connections. So there are going to be things that feel fuzzy the first time, and that can be very alarming for some people as they first encounter that. But I always come back to this quote that I really like of, what is it? That confusion is the sweat of learning, right? Like that, like you're making these connections. And so, yeah, it's a little fuzzy, but you are learning things. So keep that in mind.
And I think that on my end, it's like, when I was working as an instructor, the students who came to me and said, hey, I feel like I'm really not getting it, right? They would come to me week 1 or week 2 and say like, hey, none of this is making sense to me. I'm really confused. Generally, and I don't know if this is, I could say that this was always the case, but like those students ended up okay because they were aware of the fact that there were certain things that weren't sticking with them, and they kind of were using me as a way to identify and help them determine like what they could do to like understand those things better and to determine if those things were truly important. I think the students who always like scared me the most were the students who like kind of suffered in silence. Like they, or like sometimes they were like, yeah, I get that. And then as you dug a little bit deeper, it was like, oh, you kind of get the surface level, but like this deeper piece, like you're not really, isn't really like clicking with you. And so if anything, I would say that that feeling of that something is fuzzy is like, it's you, it's that sweat, right, Pam? That's why I love that quote so much. It's like that feeling confusion is like you identifying those things, like where it's like, oh, that's how I know what I need to work on, right? Is by knowing what I'm confused about. So that's really, I think that's great. So that to me covers lessons. I think that the next piece is like project work time. I'm not gonna like dig into this very deeply because I think that this is one of those things where you see here on the slide, like Turing embraces this like approach of project-based learning. So pretty much every week that you're going to be at Turing, you'll have a project that you're working on. It's another opportunity to like study and practice the stuff that we teach you in class. It's like this question of like, okay, we taught it to you, but can you put it into practice? And sometimes here's where students really get, this is the most fun part of Turing. Sometimes it's a piece where it's like, can you research this and can you figure out how to do it, right? Because I think that researching and picking up things on your own is actually, I know this sounds frustrating, but like that researching piece and trying things out and being able to like be frustrated, walk away, come back and figure something out, like I think that's the work of being a developer. Like
It is.
that is the skill we are trying to teach you, right? So yeah, but yes, project-based learning. We'll sometimes be working with a partner. I would say the two tips that I do have here, I think that this is something where like it's not often that our students really like fail to put in enough time for their projects. Like they feel that that's going to be very important because they know they're going to be evaluated on it. When things do go wrong, it's when they take that first night off. Like I don't understand why students would ever take the first night off. Like I used to tell students, look at Pam shaking your head. I used to tell students like every hour that you put in on the first day is like 2 hours that you don't have to put in on the last day. Like it just seems to like save you so much time. And then I would also say on that first day, do a little bit of backwards planning, which to me means like, okay, I know it's going to be due on this day. The first thing that I do, Pam, when I'm backwards planning is I subtract 2 days because I know I'm bad at estimating. Like that way if things slip, then like still like thank goodness I got it finished, right?
Yeah.
And then set some goals for yourself to say like, okay, if I'm going to be done 2 days before the project is due, then here's what I need to have done on this date. Here's what I need to have done on this date. Here's what I need to have done, all the way back to like kind of, you know, your start date. If it ends up that you actually do finish 2 days early, then guess what? There are extensions. You can go back and clean up your code. There's like so many other like learning opportunities. You could talk to your instructor and be like, hey, I think we're kind of done. Is there anything I should like, and your instructors would love to give you something where you could really like explore. It's so fun, right? I don't know, Pam, I've been talking.
Yeah, no, I love it. Like front loading is key, right? Like I 100% agree. Like that first day is very important to like kind of set the tone. And the funny thing about programming is that even after you've done it for many, many years, you'll find that your estimates of time are still going to be off, right? Because you're going to run into bugs and just like hiccups that you can't anticipate sometimes until you actually build it. And so that is why it's so important to do that backwards planning, but also front loading is key. So
yeah, I think it's just one of those things where, especially before you've tackled a problem, it's one of these things where I think that the natural impulse is to be like, oh yeah, that looks really simple, right? I just do this, this, and this. Yeah, and then you get into it and you're like, oh, I didn't think about it. Like there's this wrinkle that I didn't understand. Yeah,
that's definitely gonna happen. So.
Yeah, front loading, absolutely.
Be prepared.
Yes. So lessons, projects. This third piece to me is this like studying and practice. And this to me is a piece where, to be clear, the projects are required. Lessons are required. Like if you don't come to lessons, then you're not going to pass. And not just because you didn't learn things, but there is actually like an attendance requirement. Projects, like you have to pass your projects in order to pass a module. So that's just required. Studying and practice, this is a piece that I think is essential. Like this to me it's more than recommended. Like this is essential. And at the same time, like we are not going to check that you're doing this. But I think that like these are the things where once you've identified those fuzzy spots in your notes, right? Once you've talked to instructors about things that you could be doing, you know, this is where you're going to be setting aside time to not work on the project and work on some other things that are more like, sometimes they can feel like drills to me. So there are some like Turing exercises that we provide you. I know in backend there's like a Ruby exercises repository that you can download. Pam, I think you have something similar.
Yeah, we have mythical critters in mod 1. We have like a JS fun, a JavaScript fun repo in mod 2. So most mods have like other projects that you can work on, other kind of drills to get those reps in. So
yeah. And I think I would say here that like those are the things that we have identified that might be helpful for you. And that to me are these, like, you'll see this like sub bullet under identify your goals of Turing exercises, but also this independent practice. Like sometimes there's not an exercise that exactly fits your particular need. And you might have to just kind of brainstorm and think of like, what is it that I want to practice? Can I like set up a little exercise here where I'm just going to spend half an hour to an hour practicing this thing, even if it's not something that's provided to me. Yeah, and then I think, what's that?
I said you have that choice. Back to choice.
It's this thing where it's like, I feel like you could say that to a student and then they'd be like, you mean I can make my own exercise? Yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, yes,
like
please.
You're not limited to only the things that we provide. Or like, there are tutorials that are not Turing tutorials. And in some ways, I think that idea of like, again, like finding those resources that are not Turing resources, like when you get out on the job, like there aren't going to be like Turing, there are going to be so many problems that you have to tackle that are not covered in Turing. Right. That practice of finding other resources besides the lessons and the tutorials that we have is like super, super valuable.
Yep, it's a skill in of itself, and it's a skill you'll build while you're here. So
yeah. I made the mistake one time. Pam, I don't know if I've told you the story already.
Okay.
But I made the mistake one time of saying to a group of students, I was like, yeah, I've been doing this longer than you have, so I know how to program a little bit better, but like, whatever. That's not even the mistake. I love your face. I mean, that's just true. I mean, they'll be better soon. But then I said, I was like, yeah, but I think we can all kind of Google things. And it took me a while to realize that even that was a skill that I had actually gotten better at over time. Yep. Like Googling things, reading documentation, reading a Stack Overflow post and being able to pull out information from it quickly, or reading a blog post. It's like, and the only way that I got better was by practicing it and quite frankly, by being bad at it for a while, right? Like, it's okay to be like, by like having those few experiences where I was like, it took me 4 hours to find this and like whatever. It's
right.
Like, yeah. And next time maybe it takes 3, right? Like,
yep.
Yeah.
I love it.
The last thing I have here is take breaks. And I think, Pam, actually, do you want to talk about the Pomodoro? I feel like you have like a spiel on Pomodoros.
Yeah, I love the Pomodoro system. It's tried and true. I actually use an extension in Chrome called the Marinara timer that allows you to kind of like set your productivity time and then your break time. So lots of research behind using this technique and doing this focused time. So we generally in classes, most instructors will do about 25 to 30 minutes of focus time, right? So you come into class, you come into the lesson, that means you're shutting off Slack, you're putting away your phone, like you're limiting your distractions so that you can focus on the content that's in front of you. And it gets 100% of your focus, or as close to 100% as possible, right? Knowing that a break is coming up. So you have these breaks built in, 5-7 minute breaks, where you get up, like you leave, you go do other things, you allow your brain the space to forget what it is that you were working through, right? And come back for that other focus time. So doing things I found for myself personally, and I've seen this in students coming through the program, that doing things in this kind of structured way of focus time, break time, focus time, break time allows them to get more done in the time that they have.
Yeah.
Would you say that's true?
Yeah, 100%. And it's like one of these things where like, I think students will sometimes say like, oh, I don't have time to take breaks. And it's like, and I would say the same thing about exercises, actually, these like Turing exercises, this whole section. students will say like, oh, I don't have time to practice things, like I have to work on my project. And it's like, no, you don't have time not to. Like, doing these exercises, taking those breaks, like those are the things that allow you to move more quickly through your projects. So yeah, I think that that's exactly right. Cool. And then the last thing that I have here is just this personal routine. To me, it's a way to maintain balance. I think Turing will certainly like change your daily routine. You will not be doing the same things that you did before Turing, but I think find those things that are like super important to you. And it might, you know, there might be some things that you have to give up, like as you go through Turing, but find some space for those things that you know are going to keep you, help you be productive. I think for some people this is working out. For some people this is, you know, finding some time for friends, you know, family time, different things like that, like whatever it might be. That's like really something that is like a necessity for you, so that when you are, so that you can be fully here when you're not doing that thing, right?
Yeah.
Does that, Pam, anything?
For sure.
Any other?
Yeah, you have to exercise. And by exercise, I mean just move your body, right? Like it doesn't mean that you have to like go to the gym and lift weights or even go for like a 3-mile run or be like overly ambitious. But even if it means just going for a walk, right? Like, so walks, I think I've been telling you this, Sal. Have I told you?
Just told me today, I think.
I feel like walks are something that I just discovered recently, where I'm like, it's the most exciting part of my day. I go on a morning walk, I go on an evening walk, and they're non-negotiable, right?
Yeah.
They're like brushing your teeth, right? Like to me, non-negotiable. It's gonna happen every morning. It's gonna happen every night.
Yeah.
But I still remain flexible, like we've talked about before. So although my evening walk is non-negotiable, there may be times that I go out and I only get a 5-minute walk or a 10-minute walk and I do a quick lap outside. And then there are other evenings where I have time to do like an hour and I just stroll through the neighborhood. But the part that is non-negotiable is like getting out, moving my body, having that walk. Yep.
Yeah.
So you got to do it.
I'm sold. I'm gonna have to start taking some evening walks. I'm super excited. Like, yeah. But yeah, that's a get pumped. That's all I have. Pam, any closing words?
No, that's all I have too. So we're really excited to have you here. Happy to see like what you build out and what you create. Yeah. So please reach out if you have any questions or if you want to say hello. We're available.
Yeah. We're on Slack. All right. Good luck, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Bye.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emma, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about the opportunities that you have to get involved with the community at Turing. So like I said, I'm Emma, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at Turing. So I have zero technical background, but I do have an extensive background in student support services and education. So prior to coming to Turing, I worked at both the high school and college level supporting students, and I'm really excited about building community and helping you find your place here at Turing. My background outside of work, I volunteer mentoring 2 high school seniors. I also love traveling the world with my partner and friends, and I love to read. My partner and I live in West Denver, and we have 3 cats. The way we got 3 cats is a story for another time, but you can find me on Slack at Emma Byers. So as Jeff mentioned earlier in this video, this is Turing's mission. Turing's mission is to unlock human potential by training a diverse, inclusive student body to succeed in high fulfillment technical careers. So many of you chose Turing because we are a nonprofit organization and because we do have this mission. And it's really important to us to be mission driven. And so when we talk about being driven by our mission, it's really important to us that we define some of these words and that you understand how they influence the way that you can engage with our community. So when we talk about diversity, diversity can be a little bit of a buzzword, so we just like to really get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty about what we mean. At Turing, we really focus a lot on where people are underrepresented or marginalized in the tech community, in the tech industry. And so I'll get into a little bit more in the coming slides about how we support students of diverse backgrounds, but it's really important that we call out specifically the need to support students that are underrepresented in tech based on their race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, ability status. There are many other identities that are really important, but I think it's really important to call out that, you know, our BIPOC students, our women and other students of diverse genders, our queer students are all underrepresented, and some particularly marginalized in the tech industry. And so for us, it's important that we recruit those students into Turing so that they can go into the tech industry and really shake up the white male-dominated industry as it is right now. It also, when we talk about diversity, we also definitely mean the fact that you all are coming into this journey at Turing from a lot of different backgrounds, environments, workspaces, and so it's really important that we are recognizing the diversity of students coming in, both in their identity and also just in, you know, the background that you're coming into Turing with. One of the things that's really special to me about Turing is that you all do come from such diverse backgrounds, and you are all coming to Turing with a united goal to really change your lives for the better and find higher paying careers, higher fulfillment careers, both for yourselves and your families. So that's one way that I just really, I find Turing to be a really beautiful place, is the way that that diversity in both identity and background come into play. So I think that this is the really key piece for me, is the inclusive language. So when we talk about inclusion at Turing, I want to dig into a little bit about what we mean. So we mean specifically gender inclusion. You'll notice that we all introduce ourselves at Turing with pronouns, and pronouns are super important because they give folks an opportunity to share their gender identity and what they want to be called. What we want to be called, our names and also our pronouns are a really important part of who we are, and it's a very easy way to acknowledge another person, to say I see you, to say I respect you, and to say you belong here. So please, I encourage you to really get comfortable using pronouns, asking for people's pronouns, not assuming people's pronouns. That is a standard that we expect at Turing, and one that will hopefully make everyone feel like a more included member of our community. We also talk about racial inclusion. And so as with race and ethnicity, but also with any group of people, it's really important for folks to be able to see themselves in the tech industry. And so that is one of the reasons we're training a more diverse student body, and that's also one of the reasons that we really try to support our BIPOC students by bringing in mentors that are mentors of color and representatives from tech industries that look like them. And we also provide extensive resources, both financially and with community support, to communities who do not identify as white. And so this is just something that's really important for us to kind of put our money where our mouth is and really find ways to tangibly connect our students to networks in the community who look like them and have similar backgrounds and similar lived experiences as people of color in our community. We also talk about ability inclusion. And so we have a really robust mental health support services at Turing. We have a mental health counselor who is full-time. His name is Jun, and he's amazing. And he offers both group and individual mental health counseling. That is something that is very unique in the sort of boot camp spaces, and something that really sets us apart. So we have a lot of health and wellness opportunities, and I think that that's important both for folks who may have differences in ability in mental health or intellectual health or physical health, but also just for anyone who's embarking upon a journey that can be at times really stressful. And so that's something that we feel is really important to provide as one of our support services. And we talk a lot about whole person inclusion. So at orientation, we'll talk more about intersectionality and why that's important, and how, you know, your various identities connect to make you who you are. But I think it's just really important that we acknowledge that the reason that we offer all of these community services and the reason that we offer all of these engagement opportunities and supports is because we see you as a whole person. You are not just a software developer. You're not just at Turing to put your head down and learn to code. You're really here to be a member of our community, a member of our team, and someone that we value as a whole and complete person. And so to be inclusive of that whole self, we find it's really important to provide these support services. So again, why does it matter? I just got into this a little bit, but you are more than a software developer. It's important to us that we see you and we not just accept and respect you, but really embrace and celebrate all of the differences that you bring to the table at Turing. We also think that talking about diversity and inclusion is important because you have the opportunity and the capacity to learn and grow. So if some of these concepts are newer to you, or maybe you haven't been around a lot of people that look different from you or from different backgrounds, this is a really exciting opportunity. And we want you to walk into this opportunity sort of with open arms and ready to embrace the possibility of connecting with folks across difference, and really learning and growing as part of this community. You also have the capacity to help others feel welcome and safe and build a collective prosperity. I love that term. You'll hear me use it more than once, but I think it's really important that this is a time when, if you are able to create an inclusive space for your cohort mates by doing things like using their correct pronouns or being curious about their backgrounds, you have the opportunity to really create a space that people feel comfortable and safe and equipped to learn and really focus on their educations and on being a productive member of our community. And so you have the opportunity to come into Turing and be part of that solution, and we're really excited to welcome you into that. And then finally, you have the privilege of being able to change the terrain of the tech industry. So we want to disrupt the status quo in tech. We want to make all of tech more diverse and more inclusive, not just the tech that's happening at Turing. And so we're really excited to welcome you into that fold and hope that you can then go out into the tech industry and really be change agents, so that the whole industry at large can become more diverse, more inclusive, and really create better technology as a result of that. So, opportunities for involvement. You will learn a lot more about the different ways that you can get involved during our new student orientation in a few weeks. But before then, I want to just give you a sense of how you can start getting involved with our community right now during Mod Zero, so that you start feeling like an integrated part of our network. So a few of those opportunities. First, get to know your cohort in your Mod Zero channel. Your cohort is going to be a really important group of humans that really help you make it through this program. And so building those relationships early and really strengthening those now will make a big impact on your time in the program. Think about the student or interest groups that you'd like to join or create. So I'm happy to share the full list of student groups, and we'll be doing that at orientation. But if you have questions now, want to jump into some groups now, or are potentially interested in creating a group if it doesn't exist, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to walk through that process with you. Also consider if you might want to be a student leader for your cohort. So if you are interested in leadership, whether you have a background in teaching or facilitation, or you're just really wanting to get more involved, please be thinking about that. You'll hear a lot more during week 1 about our student leadership committee. And until then, just kind of be thinking about, is this an opportunity that I'd like to take advantage of? And then lastly, join the Let's Grab Donuts channel. So this is a channel full of Mod Zero students, current students, alums, staff, and every week folks get paired one-on-one for a 10 to 15 minute coffee or donut break. And you get to know someone new in the community, get to make a connection, get to build your network, maybe find a mentor, maybe find a friend. It's just a great way to start getting to know folks a little bit earlier on in your journey. So that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. You can find me on Slack at Emma Byers, and I'm just really looking forward to getting to know all of you in the coming weeks and months as you become a member of this community. Thanks so much.
So at this point, y'all have a good idea of what you should be expecting here at Turing, both in terms of academically and I would say like within the community. And now we'll talk a little bit about what Mod Zero is and what to expect. But before doing so, I should introduce myself a little bit. My name is David Whitaker. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the Mod Zero program lead here at Turing. My background is in sort of like food operations. I would say that leading up to going to Turing as a student, for a while I was working in working at smaller, I would say like food manufacturers, tracking food from farm to table. And in doing that work, I just found that there's a lot of manual data entry, and I sort of went to Turing to solve some of those problems that I was experiencing, or I guess trying to improve some of the processes that I found lackluster there. And in doing that, in joining the 1511 cohort at Turing, I sort of fell in love with programming, and I haven't looked back since. So I worked full stack for a smaller nonprofit building volunteer software for about a year and a half after graduating the program. And then I joined the front end instructional team towards the end of 2017. And I've been here ever since. Love it. A little bit about me personally. I love to cook, eat, and travel. I'm addicted to both ramen and burritos and many other foods. The ramen addiction came because I lived in Tokyo with my wife for about a year or so before coming back in April, back to Denver because of the state of the world, the way things are at the current moment. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because I think that without Turing, I wouldn't have been able to sort of like make that international move. And I'm excited for you all to start this journey where hopefully, like myself, like the trajectory of your lives change a little bit. So excited and want to acknowledge that like you are taking a big leap and excited for you all to start this journey here at Turing. What is Mod Zero? So Mod Zero is a prerequisite course for both of the programs here at Turing. So if you're in back end, front end, doesn't matter, you're going to be going through Mod Zero to sort of learn basic skills, foundational concepts before moving on to Mod 1. Mod Zero, I would say, is a bit of an on-ramp. So if you think of Turing mods 1 through 4 as sort of the highway, things move really quickly. Things are rather difficult, I would say. Mod Zero you can kind of think of as the on-ramp where we're not going quite as fast. We understand that some folks are working full-time still. There's not enough or like as much time for you all to dedicate to Turing at this point. So things are a little bit less intense at this point, but I would say they give you an idea of what it's going to be like at Turing. So hopefully what you'll get out of Mod Zero is you'll be able to sort of understand the systems and behaviors needed to be successful here at Turing, and as a software developer to a certain extent. You'll be able to understand foundational concepts needed for Mod 1. So a couple of the things we'll be going over are things like your terminal, right? So you can work from the command line. You can use tools such as Git, GitHub, and then we'll talk about higher level concepts such as OOP and actually have you all do some coding throughout your time in Mod Zero so you can get a taste of if you like it or not, and I think like where you can improve. And then I would say the last piece would be beginning to break down some of those social walls and building a community with your future cohort. As far as Mod Zero expectations go, I would say in order to pass Mod Zero and be Mod 1 ready, you're going to need to do the following things. So you're going to need to attend all 5 sessions and complete the required homework. You're going to need to pass the Mod Zero assessment. And then the last thing you'll have to do is pass the Mod 1 pre-work. So that can be found on the Mod Zero website at modzero.turing.io/pre-work. And all of it can be found on the calendar at modzero.turing.io/calendar. And I would say that we understand that like we're dealing with people here and all of y'all have certain things that come up that are unexpected. And I would say that as long as you're proactive in your communication and sort of like letting us know ahead of time if you got to miss a certain session or a certain deadline, we're going to be much more likely to be flexible in those cases. Like we understand things happen. So just keep that in mind moving forward. We do have really high expectations here at Turing. One of the better things in our program is the ability to repeat a module if we think that you're not ready. So if we notice that any of those bullets above aren't up to our expectations, we may ask you to repeat Mod Zero. So just know that that is a possibility. And if that happens for a second time, you will be asked to reapply to the program. So I think that, yeah, this time in Mod Zero is really just an opportunity for us to make sure that we feel like you're ready to move on in the program and be successful. And all of it comes down to that. And to sort of end things on a happy note, I would say like, as long as you're working your butt off, as long as you're asking questions and really leaning on your cohort mates, like I have no reason to suspect that you all will do poorly, right? Like I think that if you put in those good habits, put those good habits into place, you're going to be in a really good spot. And that's all we got. So if you have any questions, if you need anything from me, I would say first maybe check out mod0.turing.io to see if that answers your questions or if you can find your answers there. Otherwise, find me on Slack at Damwit, and excited to start this journey with you all. Welcome to Turing.